A Shalom Akim, Shalom, Shalom, giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bashim, Yahushai, Bashim, Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders, great millstone, for teaching us his truth, and salutations to the sincere Akim and Aquathim. And listen, may the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Raquai. I'm back in here with another quick and Lord's will, as always, an edifying lesson. And for today's lesson, I didn't really have anything written down. This is just something that came to me in the spirit in regards to comfort and how comfort essentially diverts the mind. And I kind of just want to discuss that and kind of think about the mentality, actually going through the Day of Atonement, as well as the mentality that you notice that the way the people in the world live, right? And essentially what you see is a very strong contrast between the two, because the Day of Atonement kind of forces you to kind of look inward, right, and removes a lot of distraction and removes a lot of comforts, right? Because food is also likened unto a style or a method of comfort, because it kind of, as you eat it, you get that. I was looking this up on ChatGPT earlier in regards to I forgot what I was looking up. It was in regards to I think it was dopamine or something, and dopamine essentially spikes, and when you eat certain types of foods, that's why the brain kind of wants you to kind of go and starts to eat those foods again, whether it be salty foods, chips, chocolate, cake, cheesecake, all that types of stuff, right? But what Day of Atonement does, it kind of removes all those comforts, right? And as a matter of fact, let me get this precept, and then I'll make my quick comment, right? I didn't have anything really written down, to be honest with you. I kind of was just meditating on this, right? Where was I? Okay, this is Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 9, verse 15, and it says, "For the corruptible body presseth down the soul, and the earthly tabernacle weigheth down the mind, that museth upon many things." Right? So this is what one of the pitfalls of being in this body, because this is one of the things that you think about in terms, whether it's food, pleasures, and I'm just using food as an example, but it doesn't even have to be food. It could be, it could be sex, it could be, all these different pleasures that people, like to gravitate towards. It could be the social groups or whatever, TV, entertainment, all these different things essentially divert the mind into focusing on things that are a little bit more manageable, things that kind of take your mind a little off stress, right? So what does the word muse mean anyway? So I looked it up here in the etymology, and here it says muse, it means to reflect, to ponder, to meditate, to be absorbed in thought. It says to dream, wonder, loiter, waste time, stand with one's nose in the air. It says, what else does it say? So essentially to ponder on certain things. And then, so once you take that out of the equation, you're kind of left to kind of essentially examine, look at yourself, man, so, and kind of like check your, your stats and so on and so forth, because, you look at yourself and you think, man, I can improve on certain areas. I can, I can cut back on this, or, I need to monitor that. You're kind of forced to, am I praying enough? Do I, what I'm saying? Like, you're kind of forced to, check yourself and, look at yourself and, think about, okay, what can I do to actually make improvements, adjust maneuver, so I can, be received, so, Yahweh Bashim Shai can essentially have mercy upon me, right? Because I'm already in a bad state, where, we know that we're in the position, the condition that we're in because we sinned against the Lord, right? But, one of the things I also wanted to kind of discuss also is just the contrast, because what it allows you to do in terms of, like, Day of Atonement, it forces you to kind of take away all those distractions, and then it kind of, not even kind of, but it forces you to kind of zero in and look at yourself. And that's one of the things, this kingdom doesn't promote a very to take away all those different comforts. Because when you go through and you read about Babylon in Revelation, the 18th chapter, it describes an environment that's living deliciously, that essentially dwells without care, right? And when you think about it, and what makes up a kingdom, what makes up a city, it's citizens. So the citizens also have that same mentality, because when when wisdom is crying in the chief place of concourse through the Lord's prophets, people can't visualize and internalize what is actually being conveyed. They can't see the severity of what's actually being spoken, because in their environment constantly, they're always in an environment that promotes entertainment constantly. So they can't even conceptualize or even think that, when the scriptures describe, for example, sedition among men, or describe certain things such as people shall be invading one another for the lack of bread, to roughly paraphrase. People can't visualize these things happening because they're so caught up in all the different pleasures that's constantly, in their face. You go through different, in your local big city, for example. It's no coincidence. Esau is such a mastermind. I was just looking at this right now. He is such a mastermind where he purposely puts certain colors, in your face in the city, so you're more drawn to those things and associating it with food, right? So you get so enticed. You see the big Whopper sign, and it's big and it's bright red, and you see the lettuce and the beef and the cheese melting. You see all these different things, and it's enticing your body to go and buy. It's enticing you. He's Esau studies you people, especially you Israelites, right? Just a side tangent. But the point is, these people are such in a city that dwells in constant mirth and pleasure. As a matter of fact, since I said that, what is that? Ecclesiastes? 7, 1 second. Ecclesiastes 7:2, and it says, "It is better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting. That is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart." It says, "Sorrow is better than laughter, for by saddenness of the countenance the heart is made better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth," right? So this is the mentality of the house people who are, we're in a position, we're in a house of mourning, because we understand, we're in a situation where, we want the Lord to have mercy upon us. As it says in Habakkuk, the 3rd chapter, I heard thy speech, and I was afraid, and in wrath to remember mercy. We want the Lord to remember mercy upon us, because we know we're going to need an advocate. We're going to need divine intervention in those times, because we're worms. We're sheep in the midst of wolves, right? And we need protection, right? But it should show you the where it describes sorrow. I'm sorry. Where was I? The heart of fools is in the house of mirth, right? So you look at the way these people live, they're essentially fools. They're always in that, and it's the same. And then when you listen to their vain conversations, it's the same damn thing over and over and over and over and over again. Nothing to actually enrich, to actually make themselves better, human beings. There is no conversation like that. When you go into the etymology of the word conversation, it means a manner of life, a particular way you conduct yourselves, right? Their conversation is here. Their conversation is earthly. It's not heavenly, right? Um, where was I? Okay, let me go. Hold on. Matthew. Let's bear with me on this. Let me just look for this real quick. This is Matthew chapter 4, verse 1. And it says, Then was Yahushua led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And it says, and when he fasted 40 days and 40 nights, it says, he was afterward and hungered. And when the tempter came to him, said, If thou if thou be the Son of the Most High, command these stones to be made bread. But he answered and said, It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Most High. Right? So it shows you, Yahushua was still in the spirit despite, afflicting his soul, right? And it's very, it's very interesting because, Satan come and tempt you, having, perverse dreams and, in the midst of atonement, you know what I'm saying? Like, these things can still happen to you, right? But, we remember what's very important is that we remember the scriptures, because the scriptures also say that wisdom shall meet thee in every thought, right? Because, Satan, your own, I don't want to say the word vices, but like you know your own things that that you kind of crave, whether it's cravings or things that you like, that you mostly gravitate towards and stuff, right? But we remember that to utilizing remember the words of the Lord, to be able to kind of navigate through those different situations where you're kind of low in the spirit, because it's very interesting that Satan tried to come to him in his moment of feeling low in the spirit, right? Well, I should say feeling low, after afflicting your soul, right? So there was another example actually that I was thinking about, and it kind of shows you the mentality, of our people. Let me just. Okay, this is Judges chapter 6 verse 1, and I'll read down to verse 6, and it says, And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord Yahweh delivered them into the hands of Midian 7 years. And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel, because the Midianites, the children of Israel, made them the dens which are in the mountains, in the caves, and the strongholds. And so it was, when Israel had sown, that the Midianites came up, and the Amalekites and the children of the east, even they came up against them, and they encamped against them and destroyed the increase of the earth, So what's going on here, children? We had, you know, um, been besieged by the Midianites. So the Lord was, used the Midianites to punish us because we were worshiping all these different gods, and we weren't supposed to be doing that. And what did they do? They decided, to take control a lot of the different resources. So here, for example, so here it says in verse 4, they encamped against them and destroyed the increase of the earth till thou came unto Gaza, and left no sustenance for Israel, neither sheep nor ox nor ass, right? So these things represent sustenance. These things represent food. These things represent, being able to clothe yourselves, utilize the crops. These things represent, being able to eat, right? But here's important, and it says, for they came up with their cattle in their tents, they came as grasshoppers for the multitude, for they and their camels were without number, and they entered into the land to destroy it. And Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites. And the children of Israel cried unto the Lord, right? So imagine they were greatly impoverished. Let me get that word impoverished. Impoverish. Okay. Okay. Impoverish means it means poor. It says made poor. Okay, so the im is a prefix which means into, and then impoverish means to be made poor. So they were being brought to poverty, right? And that's very interesting, because, and then they decided to call upon the Lord, right? So it shows you our people's, mentality. And it's the same mentality, even, in our time, because the scriptures describe how in affliction thou shalt seek me early, right? Because if you have all this comfort and people, there's all this food nearby, and there's all this, strip clubs open, and there's all this Netflix and, social media, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, people will start to lose it. Once all those things are taken away and they don't have anything else but to just deal with themselves. And a lot of these people out here can't deal with themselves. That's why you see a lot of examples of people crashing out, spirits creative of vengeance. You see all these different things occurring because, a lot of these people can't look at themselves. They can't deal with themselves, especially our people, because the cattle here, represents, you being able to eat. But if you have all that gone, then, oh man, I'm going to be hungry. Now I want to cry out to the Lord, right? That's our people's mindset, right? So, I kind of just I didn't really plan, to actually, put forth, I didn't put together a lesson, like, so, forgive me if I was kind of like all over the place, but, it's just something I was meditating on, in regards to, the food also serves as a distraction to kind of divert your mind from certain things. That's why it's called comfort. It's called comfort food for a reason, to be able to divert your mind from stress and, so on and so forth, but, it shows you also the contrast in these people, because these people are constantly marinating, stewing, sauteing, barbecuing in their pleasures, and they can't actually have never thought to actually deal with themselves and deal with the monsters in their closet. You know what I'm saying? Or how do you behave when you don't have, that much food to eat? You know what I'm saying? Like, these hard questions, people can't deal with that. They run from it. You know what I'm saying? So, that's pretty much it. But I sincerely pray and hope that this lesson was edifying, quick, straight to the point. And like I said, I didn't really plan anything, but I just thought I would just share a couple thoughts on food and pleasure and remembering the words of the Lord, meditating on these things, and because it kind of forces you to look at yourself and you know and reform to make yourself better, right? So anyways, I'll leave it there, but Lord's will, this lesson was edifying. Just like to give all praises, glory and honor to Yahweh Bashem El Shai. So next time I say shalom.